So Pusha T went on a podcast. He had talked to these two gentlemen from the New York Times. They sat down and talked about his album, talked about his experiences. At this point, Pusha T, the clips, specifically Pusha T, has been very vocal about everything that's been going on. And he adds a little bit more context about the situation with Kendrick Lamar, the Chains of Whip verse, it getting shelved or censored, and then leaving Def Jam. He adds more context to that. One thing that I want to point out in this situation here, in this conversation, is that he talks about the lyrics committee. Now, real quick, just to explain what the lyric committee is, it's a part of the company that goes over the music that you have made. Basically, it's supposed to be like a copyright check, and they're supposed to check if there's anything going on, anything wrong that they need to correct. If there's a sample out there, if there's a lyric, they have to check it. Now, what Pusha T goes into is how he talks about how sometimes they get the lyrics wrong. Now, it's one thing to go over the lyrics and understand what this lyric meant, and then saying, hey, you can't use that, but it's the fact that they move the goalpost when they read the lyrics. Sometimes they'll read a lyric and it won't be the exact meaning of what the artist meant. And that's where Pusha T starts coming in and starts explaining how this lyric committee has just been used to mess with him and censor his music. That's how he looks at it at this point, because there was no way that somebody from the lyric committee was going to be able to break down these lyrics better than the person who wrote them. And that was the most craziest part to talk about, or to hear him talk about, was that there was somebody in the company that was supposed to listen to the music and double check it and make sure it was good, and then come up with a meaning themselves than the meaning that he could originally just tell them, because he's the one that wrote the art. He's the one that wrote the song. How are you going to tell them what it means over him? And this is something that he starts talking about right before he talks about the Chains and Whips verse with Kendrick Lamar. Just to put it in perspective, the label, the lyric committee, the people that were censoring Pusha T to begin with, they were being overly sensitive about what Pusha T was creating, because they wanted to make sure that he wasn't taking shots or he wasn't doing something offensive. The only thing is, they were nitpicking at everything. And if anything was to be said in a way that could have been offensive, they would shelve it. In this video, he explains how when he did the song with Pop Smoke, I believe there was 2 times where they had tried to correct this. And in one time, there was lyrics that were said. And then, on the other hand, there was the other song that had no lyrics that were offensive. One song, possibly, yeah, it had lyrics that were offensive. On the other side, the other song wasn't offensive. And he explains that the label or the lyric committee had took both of the records as offensive, when realistically only one of them had said something. But this is the problem. Now, any song that he makes, they're going to try to censor it. Despite nothing being said, you could at least talk to the artist and ask them, what does this mean? The artist is right there to tell you what the lyrics mean. If anybody could break down the artist to a lyric committee, it's the person who wrote the lyrics. But they're not having that. This is just the way that Pusha T is explaining. For them to censor you, even though you're saying otherwise, they don't have to take your word for it. They'll take the lyric committee's word for it over yours, which is crazy because you wrote the songs. Now, despite all of this happening, Pusha T is still working with Def Jam at this time. He is still trying to put this Clips album out. And this is where he starts having the same issues with the lyric committee again, because now they're trying to censor Chains and Whips. And this is where we are today. Now, for what Pusha T is saying, he's saying that everything was good. There were 10 songs in this recorded album before they got to the Chains and Whip verse. As soon as they got to the song Chains and Whips, this is where everything started being at a halt, at a standstill. The label started getting involved and they started talking to the Clips. They started talking to Pusha T. And this is where the censorship, the suppressing starts happening again. But only this time, Pusha T decides to add context. He decides to tell you exactly what they were saying and how he wasn't rocking with what was said to him. Now, at this point, we all know that the Clips' label, Def Jam, and the father company, UMG, had attempted to suppress the song, try to censor the song with the Kendrick Lamar verse, Chains and Whips. We know that up until this point. But the context that he's adding now is that when this started becoming a problem, when the label heard Chains and Whips and they heard the Kendrick Lamar verse, they tried to contact Pusha T, but they didn't contact him through email. They didn't contact him through text messages. They didn't want to leave any written statement. They didn't want to leave anything in writing. Every time that they try to contact him or anybody associated with him, they would have to call him. They did not want to have anything in writing when they were trying to contact Pusha T about this. When they wanted to contact about the Chains and Whips verse regarding Kendrick Lamar, they only wanted to speak on the phone, even going as far as calling him multiple times, over 10 times at one moment. That goes to show you that they didn't want anything in writing that could later on be exposed, screenshotted, shared to the public, and let people know that this is how they're getting down. That's a very telling sign when somebody only wants to speak over the phone because they fear that they might be exposed through text message. But now that they're in contact with the Clips, Pusha T and his team, they're talking to him and they're telling him that there's a specific lyric in the Chains and Whips verse that they feel like needs to be censored, or they feel like it needs to be shelved, or they feel like needs to be addressed. And he's like, well, what is it? And they tell him that it's this part in the verse where Kendrick says trump card. Now, if you don't know the expression of a trump card means an advantage that makes you more likely to succeed than other people, especially something that other people do not know about. Now, Kendrick Lamar says the word trump card in his verse, and this is something that the Lyric Committee, Def Jam, the label, Father Company, UMG, they all looked at as something that needs to be censored. This is when they start saying that Kendrick needs to censor his verse. They don't want to get involved with Trump. But the funny thing is that this has nothing to do with Trump. It says trump card, but this isn't for Donald Trump. This isn't for Trump, the person. This is just trump card, the expression, the meaning. But this is very telling. And this goes back to what Pusha T was saying. The Lyric Committee, or the people over there at the label, are not even getting the lyrics correct. In fact, in his opinion, he thinks that this was just used as an excuse to just censor the verse without saying the real reason. You don't want two artists that Drake is beefing with on the song, and you're trying to say that this Trump lyric is the reason why you want it censored. But the real reason why you want it censored is because of Pusha T and Kendrick on the same song together. And that is something that you don't want, but you don't want to tell them straight up. But eventually, Pusha T finds out the truth. He knows that that's not the real case. In his mind, he looks at it like they don't want me and Kendrick on the song together, and this is their poor way of trying to get us off the song together. But this is Def Jam just being sneaky, trying to blame a lyric that has nothing to do with anything and trying to say that it means something just so they could get the song censored. But Pusha T, the Clips, they're not slow. They know exactly what's going on. And if anybody could break down lyrics better than the Lyric Committee or a label, it's going to be another artist, especially an artist who's been working on their own album. But anybody in the Lyric Committee, anybody from the label at Def Jam that read those lyrics when they saw Trump card and thought of Donald Trump, bro, they need to get fired, bro. There is no way that anybody would confuse Trump card for Donald Trump, bro. Those two things, come on, man. If you're working for a label company and think that that means Donald Trump, bro, you are completely, completely wrong. They know they're wrong, but they're looking for anything, any little thing that they could see or that they could find in the music that could potentially get it censored. So it's the fact that they know that the lyrics are irrelevant to Donald Trump. It's the fact that they want to claim that it is tied to Donald Trump so that way they could get it censored. The label making excuses to censor a song is crazy. And it's no wonder why the Clips had left the label because of this. But this makes it all the more obvious that Pusha T was aware that they were just trying to find anything to prevent this song from coming out. Because I guess Trump card is being said, but I don't think I ever heard the word Trump card in the lyrics in Chains and Whip, at least for the snippet that had recently came out that was previewed with Pharrell and the Clips. I didn't hear the word Trump card. So it might be a part of the verse that comes on later on in the song. But now that we know that that was the angle that Def Jam was trying to run with, bro, now we know for sure they were just trying to grasp at anything, bro. They were grasping at straws here, bro. They weren't really, they didn't really have anything to pinpoint that could have been a diss that they could have read on paper and been like, oh yeah, I didn't like that. Or maybe they just read it and thought that it was all a diss. I know people interpret lyrics differently, but if you have the artist there to interpret it for you, at least Pusha T there. If Kendrick is not there, you at least have Pusha T there, and he could tell you for sure if this was a diss or not. When he was talking about the Pop Smoke situation in this interview, he had said one song was a diss. Yeah, it had some bars in there. The other one, no, but they censored both of them. So he would have been honest and told you, like, yeah, I said that. And it probably would have been the same outcome. He probably would have kept the song up. He probably would have told them no if they censored it. But the fact that they try to point out like a Trump lyric is crazy to me. And I'm sure there's more to it that was said. But as far as right now, this is what he said in this interview before they started getting on to the next topic. But it's just crazy how the label was just trying to pick at anything just to try to censor this verse, try to censor this song. And they ended up leaving from Def Jam and going with Roc Nation, as we know now. But the context that Pusha T added just made me realize they were really just trying to reach at anything, reaching for the stars here. Trump card, we don't want him talking about Trump. Like, what, bro? That is crazy. But y'all tell me how you feel about this and get back to me, man. Y'all tell me how you feel about the context that he's added in regards to them trying to censor this verse, this Chains and Whips verse with Kendrick Lamar, and all of that, man. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video, man. Peace. Keep it a legend.